For 8 years, the boy touched his ear. Every doctor, from Harley Street to Johns Hopkins, said the same thing. Nothing we can do. His father spent $14 million, chartered private jets across continents, begged the world's most expensive specialists to look again. They all said the same thing: irreversible. Then a housekeeper noticed something no one else did, and what she pulled from that child's ear would expose a conspiracy of greed and prove that sometimes the most expensive help is the most useless. Charles Waring was a tech billionaire. AI software empire worth $8 billion, ours, mansions, helicopters, more wealth than most people could imagine in 10 lifetimes. But his son Andrew was born deaf. 8 years old, never heard a single sound. Charles tried everything: London specialists, Swiss experimental clinics, Tokyo's most advanced medical teams. Doctors who charge $15,000 just to walk through the door. They ran tests, scans, experimental procedures. All of them said the same thing: congenital sensorineural deafness, irreversible, accept it. But Charles couldn't accept it because Andrew was all he had left. His wife Isabel died giving birth to that boy. Emergency complications. Charles was in Tokyo closing a deal when it happened. By the time his plane landed, she was gone. So Charles kept searching, kept spending, kept begging anyone who would listen for an answer. What he didn't know, the answer wasn't coming from a hospital. It was coming from the woman he'd just hired to clean his floors. Helen Rivers was a housekeeper, 34 years old. No medical degree, no credentials. Just a woman desperate to save her grandfather's house from foreclosure. 3 months behind on the mortgage, 60 days from losing everything. But she noticed something about Andrew that every specialist had missed. Something in his ear, something dark. And one afternoon, while Charles was locked in a video conference, she made a decision that would either save that boy's life or destroy her own. What happened next? I need you to see it for yourself. Before we continue, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. This story will change how you think about trust, expertise, and who really sees the truth. The Waring Manor stretched across 50 acres of Connecticut's Gold Coast, like a monument to everything money could buy and nothing it could heal. Glass and steel rose from manicured lawns, all sharp angles and cold precision, ultra-modern architecture that won awards but felt like living inside a diamond, beautiful, expensive, lifeless. Inside, white marble floors reflected nothing but emptiness. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed perfect views of gardens no one walked through. Smart home technology controlled everything: temperature, lighting, security, but couldn't generate the one thing the house desperately needed: warmth. No music played through the automated sound system. No television noise bounced off the vaulted ceilings. No laughter echoed in the cathedral-like spaces. Just silence. The oppressive kind. The kind that felt like a tomb for people still breathing. Charles Waring sat in his study most evenings, a 42-year-old man who looked a decade older. Sharp suits couldn't hide his exhaustion. Silver threaded through his dark hair prematurely, earned through sleepless nights and relentless guilt. He'd built Waring Tech into an $8 billion AI software empire, but empire building couldn't fill the holes in his life. 16-hour workdays kept him away from the parts of the house where Isabel's presence still lingered, the conservatory where she'd planned Andrew's nursery, the kitchen where her cookbook still sat on the shelf, the bedroom he couldn't bear to enter. The study was his refuge and his prison. Medical files covered every surface. Specialist reports papered the walls like expensive wallpaper. London, Zurich, Tokyo, Boston. 8 years of searching. $14 million spent on the world's finest doctors, all saying the same thing: congenital sensorineural hearing loss. Irreversible. No surgical intervention possible. Charles had been in Tokyo closing a deal when Isabel went into labor. Emergency C-section. Unexpected hemorrhaging. By the time his plane landed, she was gone, and Andrew was here, delivered into the world by doctors who couldn't save his mother. Diagnosed within months with a silence that would define his life. Charles's guilt was a stone he carried in his chest. I chose money over being there. I failed them both. So he did what he knew how to do. He spent. London specialists in year 1, Zurich clinics in year 2, Tokyo experimentalists in year 3. Boston's finest for years 4 through 8. Each consultation the same: examinations, scans, sympathetic head shaking, and recommendations for ongoing monitoring at $50,000 per quarter. Charles never questioned it, he just paid. Down the hall in his custom-designed wing, Andrew lived in careful isolation. 8 years old, small for his age, with watchful, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. His world was controlled, safe, silent, flashing light alerts instead of doorbells, visual timers instead of alarms, specialized equipment monitoring everything except what mattered. Private tutors taught him. Speech therapists worked with him 3 times weekly. Sign language instructors gave him words his voice couldn't form. Occupational therapists helped him navigate a world designed for hearing children. But recently, something had changed. Andrew touched his right ear constantly now, wincing when he thought no one was watching. Sometimes tears would slip down his cheeks. Charles scheduled another round of specialists. More scans? Same answer: nothing we can do. The medical files noted his increased sensitivity in right ear canal, likely psychosomatic. The concierge service managing his appointments assured Charles they'd continue monitoring the situation. No one noticed Andrew's drawings, pictures of his ear with black scribbles inside, shown to therapists who dismissed them as processing his condition. That evening, Charles stood before Isabel's portrait above the fireplace. Her smile was frozen in oil paint, her eyes still bright, still alive. "I couldn't save you," he whispered to her image. "I can't fix him. What good is all this money?" The house offered no answer, just silence. 40 miles away in New Haven, a woman named Helen Rivers boarded a bus, clutching a foreclosure notice in trembling hands. She was heading toward an interview at an address that sounded like a dream. She didn't know she was heading toward 3 lives that desperately needed saving, including her own. Helen Rivers stepped off the bus at dawn, clutching the foreclosure notice like it might disappear if she loosened her grip. 34 years old, exhausted down to her bones, but she kept her spine straight and her chin up. Her clothes were worn thin from washing, but they were clean, impeccably clean. Dignity didn't cost money. Her grandfather had taught her that. Thomas Rivers had raised her after the factory accident took her parents when she was 9. Navy medic turned community health worker. He'd filled their 1920s craftsman house with medical books and life lessons. He'd scraped together money for her high school graduation, watched her start community college nursing courses with pride in his eyes. But when the money ran out, so did her education. No degree, no credentials, just years of work: home health aide, hospital orderly, nursing home assistant, always caregiving, never credentialed enough to matter. Now, his house, her childhood home, was 60 days from foreclosure auction, $180,000 in mortgage, $23,400 in arrears. The notice in her hand was clinical about it: pay or lose everything. She'd tried second jobs, loan applications, selling everything valuable. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But the house held more than wood and nails. Her grandfather's medical books still lined the shelves. His voice still echoed in every room. His lessons still lived in her bones. Trust your eyes, Helen. Doctors don't always know everything. Sometimes the person who spends the most time with the patient sees what the specialist misses. She'd learned that lesson watching him go deaf in one ear for 2 years. Doctors saw him 6 times, billed insurance every visit, never actually looked, until a visiting nurse arrived with a flashlight and tweezers and extracted the impacted cerumen in 5 minutes. His hearing flooded back instantly. Helen never forgot his words afterward. A nurse with a flashlight fixed what specialists couldn't find. Never forget that, child. The Waring Manor gates opened and Helen's breath caught. This wasn't a house. It was a fortress of glass and money. Mrs. Thornton met her in the employment office. 55, former British military, running the household like a regiment. The position was housekeeper, $4,200 a month, 6-day weeks. Live-in option available. "I'll need to go home each night," Helen said quietly. She couldn't abandon her grandfather's house, not yet. Mrs. Thornton's eyes narrowed, but she nodded. Then came the warnings. "Mr. Waring values privacy and order above all else. You will clean. You will be invisible. You will not speak to Mr. Waring unless spoken to. And you will not, under any circumstances, interact with Andrew. Helen's hands tightened in her lap. The boy? The boy has specialists, therapists, tutors. He does not need staff attempting to help. Mrs. Thornton's voice could cut glass. The last housekeeper tried. She lasted 4 days. Am I clear? Yes, ma'am. Her first day began at dawn. The mansion's scale overwhelmed her. White marble, endless windows, technology controlling everything. But the coldness struck deeper. No warmth, no life, just expensive emptiness. She was cleaning the main hallway when she saw him. A small boy sitting on the curved staircase, arranging toy cars in precise, perfect lines. He didn't look up, didn't acknowledge her presence. His movements were careful, contained, lonely. Then he touched his right ear, just briefly. A wince crossed his face. His hand trembled slightly. Helen's breath stopped. That gesture, that exact gesture. Her grandfather used to do the same thing before they found the blockage. Her feet moved before her mind caught up. She had to ask if he was okay, had to step away from the child, now. Mrs. Thornton's voice cracked like a whip. Helen froze, then stepped back, heart pounding. In the service hallway, Mrs. Thornton's fury was controlled but absolute. I saw what you were about to do. Don't. Mr. Waring has spent millions on his son's care. You are here to clean, nothing more. I understand, ma'am. I'm sorry. But she wasn't sorry. She was terrified because something was wrong with that boy's ear, and everyone was too busy being professional to notice. That evening, finishing her shift, Helen passed the sunroom. Andrew sat alone, surrounded by expensive equipment designed to help him, touching his ear again. Silent, isolated, suffering. Her grandfather's voice whispered in her memory, "Pay attention, child. Pay attention." Helen pressed her hand against the doorframe, watching the boy who nobody truly saw. "I see you, Andrew," she whispered. "I see you." She didn't know it yet, but those words would cost her everything, and save them both. Helen started counting on day 3. 14 times in 1 hour, Andrew touched his right ear while she cleaned the hallway. 14 winces, 14 moments of pain nobody else seemed to notice. She scrubbed baseboards and documented everything in her mind. Day 5, she saw him press his entire palm against the ear, his small face contorting in silent agony. Day 7, she found him in the library, both hands clamped over his ear, body shaking with tears that made no sound. Each time she cleaned nearby, pretending not to see, cataloging every detail. Day 9 changed everything. Helen was dusting the sunroom when Andrew dropped a puzzle piece. It rolled under the couch, just out of his reach. He stretched for it, frustration building in his shoulders. Helen hesitated. Mrs. Thornton's warning echoed in her skull, then knelt and retrieved the piece. Andrew looked up at her. Really looked. Their first real eye contact. Helen's hands moved before she thought about it, signing, "You're welcome," in the basic ASL she'd learned working at the nursing home. Andrew's eyes went wide, an adult who knew his language. His hands flew up. "Thank you. What's your name?" Helen spelled it carefully. Helen. The smile that broke across his face was the first she'd seen. It cracked something open in her chest. After that, they developed their own secret language. Not the formal ASL his tutors drilled, but something personal, just theirs. Helen left small gifts, an origami crane folded from cleaning schedule paper, a smooth stone from the garden, a drawing of an airplane because his room overflowed with model planes. Andrew responded in kind. The crane came back with a drawing of a bird. A handwritten note appeared. "Thank you for seeing me." He created a special sign just for her, touching his heart, then pointing. Helen saw what others missed. The staff avoided Andrew like his silence might be contagious. The therapist worked with him clinically, professionally, never seeing the whole child. Charles barely looked at his son. Guilt made eye contact too painful. But Helen saw everything. Andrew reading books meant for 12-year-olds. Watching other children play in the distant park through binoculars. His loneliness, a tangible thing. The ear touching increasing to every 10 minutes. Hope fading from his eyes as he stopped trying to tell adults about his pain. Day 18, he doubled over in the hallway. Helen dropped her mop and rushed to him, Mrs. Thornton nowhere in sight. "Can I look?" She signed gently. Andrew nodded, desperate. Helen tilted his head toward the window light, and her breath stopped. There, deep in the ear canal, something dark, dense, unnatural, exactly what her grandfather had. Impacted cerumen mixed with debris, hardened over years, pressing against the eardrum. Her nights off became research missions at the public library. She learned about conductive hearing loss, how severe impaction could mimic other conditions, how children were misdiagnosed for years. The question burned. What if Andrew's deafness wasn't what they thought? Day 21, Mrs. Thornton caught her showing Andrew origami in the library. "My office. Now!" The ultimatum was brutal. "You were warned. The boy has professionals. If I catch you near him again, you're finished." Helen tried to explain about the ear. "Ma'am, I think something's wrong." "Are you a doctor?" "No, then keep your observations to yourself." That night, Helen sat at her kitchen table between two stacks of paper. Left side, foreclosure notice showing 45 days remaining. Her grandfather's mortgage documents, family photos. Right side, research on ear blockages, Andrew's notes, her observations. She needed this job to save the house, but Andrew needed someone to listen. Her grandfather's voice whispered through the years. "Sometimes the right choice costs you everything, Helen, but it's still right." Helen opened his old medical bag from under her bed. The otoscope, tweezers, instruments, all still there. She held the tweezers with shaking hands. "What do I do, Grandpa?" she whispered to the empty room. "What do I do?" Outside her window, 3 weeks until foreclosure. In her heart, a boy counting on her to see what no one else would. The answer was coming, and it would change everything. Charles Waring watched his son from the study window. Andrew sat alone in the garden again, arranging stones in patterns only he understood. Always alone, every single day, alone. Charles saw the isolation, the careful movements, the small figure dwarfed by expensive landscaping. What he didn't see was the pain, the way Andrew's hand drifted to his ear, the silent tears, the suffering happening in plain sight. His solution never changed. Another specialist appointment. This time, Dr. Raymond Pierce from Johns Hopkins. $15,000 for a consultation. The appointment replayed in Charles's mind like a loop he couldn't escape. Same examination, same scans, same sympathetic head shake. "Mr. Waring, we've discussed this. Andrew's condition is permanent, but he seems to be in pain. Children on the spectrum sometimes develop phantom sensations. It's psychosomatic. We can prescribe something for anxiety." Charles left with a prescription, not answers. He always left with prescriptions, never answers. Helen's crisis began on day 24. She found Andrew collapsed in the garden that morning, held him until the pain passed, no words needed between them. That afternoon, she examined his ear again. The blockage was larger, darker, unmistakable. She knew what it was, knew what to do, knew the consequences. That evening, she called the bank from her kitchen. "I need an extension on the foreclosure." "Ma'am, we've given you 3 extensions already. Please, just 30 more days." "I'm sorry. The auction is scheduled for 6 weeks from today." "That's final." Helen hung up and stared at the walls her grandfather had painted. Day 25, she barely slept. Morning brought Andrew's note, slipped under the cleaning supply door, a drawing of Helen with angel wings, Andrew holding her hand. The caption in shaky handwriting, "You see me when I'm invisible." Helen cried in the supply closet for 10 minutes. That afternoon, she overheard Charles on the phone. "Schedule another round with the Boston specialists. I don't care what it costs." "Sir, they've examined him 4 times. I don't accept can't be done. Find someone who can help him." Helen's frustration burned. He was looking in the wrong place, asking the wrong people, throwing money at a problem that needed attention, not wealth. Day 26, Helen brought her grandfather's medical bag to work, hidden in her cleaning cart. She didn't know what she was going to do, but she needed it close. At lunch, she sat in her car and called Maria. "What are you thinking about doing?" "Something that could save him or destroy me." "You could go to jail, Helen." "I'm sure it's the right thing. I'm not sure I'm brave enough to do it." Maria's voice was gentle. "Your grandfather didn't raise a coward." That afternoon, cleaning Andrew's room, Helen saw his journal open on the desk, one line visible in a child's handwriting. I wish someone could hear me screaming even though no sound comes out. Her resolve crystallized like ice. She remembered her grandfather at 14, going deaf, frustrated, angry. Doctors dismissing him, visit after visit. Then the visiting nurse who actually looked. "Mr. Rivers, you have severe impaction." This should have been addressed months ago. 5 minutes to fix what specialists had missed for 2 years. Her grandfather's tears when he could hear birds again. His anger. Those doctors billed insurance every time. Not one of them actually looked. His lesson burned in her memory. The system fails people, Helen. Sometimes regular folks have to step up. That night, Helen sat with his Bible, hands shaking. "God, I don't know if this is you calling or me being foolish. Give me wisdom. Give me courage. And if I'm wrong, stop me. Please stop me." No answer came. Just the heavy silence of decision. She sterilized the tweezers, packed gauze and antiseptic, placed the bag in her car. Day 27, she found Andrew in the hallway, pale, both hands pressed to his ear, gone still and silent and empty. She knelt beside him. "How long has it hurt like this?" He signed slowly. "Always, but worse now. I think something is wrong inside." "I think you're right. The doctors say nothing's wrong. Dad believes them. What if they're missing something?" His eyes met hers. "Can you see it?" "Yes." "Can you fix it?" Helen's hands trembled. "I think so, but it's risky. I could get in trouble. You could get hurt if I'm wrong." Andrew signed without hesitation. "I trust you more than I trust them." "Mrs. Rivers, step away from the child." Mrs. Thornton stood at the hallway's end, fury controlled but absolute. "I'm just concerned. Your concern is not required. Are you suggesting you know better than specialists from Hopkins, from Mass General, from Zurich?" Helen's voice was quiet. "I'm suggesting they might have missed something. Your employment is terminated. Effective immediately. You have 1 hour." Helen's stomach dropped, but Andrew's eyes were on her, wide with panic. The job was gone. The house would follow. But Andrew was still suffering, and she was the only one who'd truly looked. She packed her supplies. Andrew appeared in the doorway, seeing everything. "You're leaving?" "I have to." "Who will see me now?" Helen knelt, took his small hands in hers. "Before I go, will you let me try something? It might hurt for a second, but I think it will help." "When?" "Now, before they make me leave." Andrew nodded. Helen's heart pounded. "Show me to a room with good light." Andrew led Helen to the conservatory, glass walls framing afternoon sunlight, the space warm and bright and utterly exposed. They were alone. Charles was locked in a video conference at the far end of the mansion. Staff bustled elsewhere. Helen had maybe 15 minutes before security came to escort her out forever. She spread a clean towel on the bench with shaking hands, opened her grandfather's medical bag. The leather was worn soft from decades of use. "Grandpa, guide my hands, please." She sterilized the tweezers with alcohol wipes. The sharp medicinal smell brought memories flooding back. Her grandfather's careful hands, his steady voice teaching her to pay attention. Andrew sat perfectly still, watching her with complete trust. That trust terrified her more than anything. Helen signed, "I'm going to tilt your head. If it hurts too much, tap my arm twice. I'll stop immediately." Andrew signed back, "I'm not scared. I'm scared enough for both of us." The ghost of a smile crossed his face. Helen lifted her grandfather's otoscope. The light still worked after all these years, a small miracle. She angled it into Andrew's ear canal, and her breath stopped. The mass was larger than she'd expected. Dark brown, almost black, hardened cerumen mixed with debris, pressed against the tympanic membrane. Inflammation ringed it. Years of buildup, years of pain, years of specialists who never bothered to actually look. Her hands shook so badly she had to stop, breathe, center herself. Andrew reached up and touched her hand gently. This 8-year-old child comforting her. Helen signed, "Ready?" Andrew nodded. She angled the tweezers into the ear canal, heart hammering. The mass was hard, compacted, stuck like it had grown roots. She hooked it gently, pulled with steady pressure. Resistance. Andrew tensed but didn't pull away. She adjusted the angle, tried again. More resistance. Her pulse thundering in her ears. and then release. The mass slid free, larger than a pencil eraser, years of blocked sound sitting dark and wet in her palm. Andrew sat motionless, eyes closed. "It's out, sweetheart," Helen whispered. "It's out." For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then Andrew's eyes flew open, his mouth opened in a gasp, real, audible, loud. His hand flew to his ear, not in pain, but shock. He looked around the conservatory like he'd never seen it before. "What?" The voice was rough, unpracticed, beautiful. He stood spinning, pointing at the fountain outside. "What's that sound?" Helen was crying. "That's water, the fountain. And that, the wall clock. That's a clock, ticking." He touched his throat, felt the vibration. "This is me?" "Yes, baby, that's you. You can hear yourself." Andrew started laughing and crying simultaneously. "I can hear me crying. I can hear me laughing." He turned to Helen, tears streaming. "Thank you." Then louder. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." She pulled him close. "You're welcome. You're so welcome." "Is this what everyone hears all the time?" "Yes. It's so loud. It's so much. It's—" He stopped, listened. "I can hear footsteps." The conservatory door flew open. Charles Waring stood frozen, face white as death. Mrs. Thornton and a security guard behind him. He took in the scene, Andrew crying, Helen with medical instruments, blood on the gauze. "What have you done to my son?" Andrew turned, responding to his father's voice without seeing his lips for the first time in his life. "Dad?" The word uncertain, wondering. Charles froze. "Andrew? Dad? I can hear you. I can hear your voice." But Charles was staring at the blood, the tweezers, the unauthorized violation of every rule. Terror crushed wonder. "Security, detain her, now. Someone call the police." The guard grabbed Helen's arm. She didn't resist. "Mr. Waring, please listen. You are not a doctor. You could have killed him." Helen held up her palm, the dark mass visible. "This was blocking his hearing. This is why he's been in pain." Charles wouldn't look. "I'm not interested in your excuses." Andrew was screaming now, real, loud, desperate. "No, don't take her. She helped me. Dad, listen to me." Charles hesitated for 1 second, hearing his son's voice truly for the first time. But fear won. "Take her to security. Keep her there until police arrive." They dragged Helen toward the door. She looked back, signed with her free hand. "You're going to be okay now." Andrew sobbed, loud, messy, heartbroken. "Don't go. Please don't go." "Listen to the world, Andrew. Hear everything." The door shut. Andrew collapsed in his father's arms, crying words Charles had never heard. "She saved me, Dad. Why won't you listen?" Charles held his son, feeling the vibrations, hearing the voice, staring at the dark mass left behind on the bench. The question forming in his mind, terrible and true. What have I done? Charles rushed Andrew to Connecticut Children's Medical Center, his mind a storm of fear and confusion. The emergency room swarmed them. Doctors, nurses, monitors beeping, machines humming, voices overlapping in clinical urgency. Andrew pressed his hands over his ears, overwhelmed. "It's too much, Dad. Everything is so loud." Charles held him close. "I know, son, I know." But even through the chaos, the miracle was undeniable. Andrew was responding to sounds. Dr. Sarah Chen, chief of pediatric otolaryngology, entered with Andrew's file, her expression puzzled. "Mr. Waring, I have Andrew in our system as having permanent sensorineural deafness." "That's correct. That's always been his diagnosis." After examining Andrew, Dr. Chen frowned. "Sir, that's not what I'm seeing. His tympanic membrane shows signs of recent minor trauma, already healing, but his auditory function is responding normally. That's impossible. Can you tell me what happened today?" Charles explained haltingly, leaving out Helen's identity. "Someone removed something from his ear. May I see it?" Charles handed over the specimen bag containing the dark mass. Dr. Chen examined it, her expression growing grave. "Mr. Waring, this is a severe cerumen impaction. Based on its size and density, I'd estimate it's been accumulating for 5 to 7 years. That's impossible. He's been examined by the best specialists. I need to pull his complete medical history. All of it." Something in her tone made Charles's stomach drop. 45 minutes in a private waiting room. Andrew wore noise-canceling headphones. The world's still too loud. Charles paced, questions multiplying like cells dividing. How did everyone miss this? Why didn't scans show it? Who was Helen Rivers, and how did she know to look? Dr. Chen returned with a laptop and files. Her face was professional, but her eyes burned with anger. "Mr. Waring, I need you to sit down." She opened the first file, a scan from 3 years ago. Her finger pointed to a notation highlighted in red. Dense accumulation noted in right external auditory canal. Recommend otoscopic examination and possible cerumen extraction before proceeding with further sensorineural assessment. Charles stared. "I never saw this." "There's more." A second file from 5 years ago. Patient presence with possible impacted cerumen. Unable to complete full examination of tympanic membrane due to obstruction. Recommend extraction before confirming diagnosis. A third from 4 years ago. Note: external ear canal shows blockage. Family has been advised to schedule cleaning procedure before next consultation. Dr. Chen arranged them chronologically. At least 3 specialists documented this blockage, all recommended extraction. None followed up. How is that possible? I called Platinum Healthcare Coordination, the concierge service managing your appointments. They claim these recommendations were noted for future consideration, but never elevated as urgent because ongoing monitoring was deemed more appropriate. Ongoing monitoring. The words detonated in Charles's chest. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Pull every invoice from Platinum Healthcare for the past 8 years. Dr. Chen continued quietly. "Mr. Waring, a simple earwax removal costs $150 to $500. 15-minute procedure. It would have ended their involvement with your son." The email arrived. Total paid, $14.2 million. Quarterly monitoring appointments at $50,000 each. Annual assessments at $250,000. Experimental consultations over $500,000. Coordinator fees at 15% of all medical expenses. All for a condition that could have been resolved in 1 appointment. Charles stood, walked to the window, couldn't breathe. They kept my son deaf, on purpose, for money. "I can't speak to intent," Dr. Chen said carefully, "but this level of oversight failure across multiple institutions is extraordinary. 8 years. He suffered for 8 years because these people wanted to keep billing me. There will be investigations, medical board reviews, legal action." Charles turned. "The woman who helped him. I had her arrested." Dr. Chen's eyes widened. "What?" He explained. Helen, the housekeeper, the extraction, his panic. "Was she medically trained?" "I don't know. I don't know anything about her." "Well, I can tell you this. She performed the extraction competently. Minimal trauma, no infection, proper technique. She did what a dozen specialists failed to do. She actually helped your son." Charles sat down hard. "I called her dangerous. I told security she could have killed him." "Where is she now?" "In my security office. The police are probably—" He stood abruptly. "I have to go." Andrew removed one earphone. "Dad, is Helen okay?" Charles knelt. "I'm going to make sure she is, I promise." "She saved me, Dad. She was the only one who really looked." Charles' voice broke. "I know, son, I know." He sprinted through the hospital, making calls, his driver, his lawyer, security. By the time he reached the precinct, Helen had been processed 15 minutes ago. Charles stormed inside. "My name is Charles Waring. You have Helen Rivers." "I'm dropping all charges. Release her immediately." 20 minutes later, Helen walked out in handcuffs, eyes red. She saw Charles and flinched. He approached slowly. "Mrs. Rivers, I need to speak with you." "I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have—" "Don't. Please don't apologize." He turned to the officer. "Remove the handcuffs. She's committed no crime." The precinct gave them a consultation room. Bare walls, fluorescent lights humming, plastic chairs bolted to the floor. Charles and Helen sat across a table from each other, the gulf between them visible in every detail, his tailored suit versus her rumpled housekeeper's uniform, his power versus her exhaustion, wealth versus survival, all of it stark in this sterile space. For 30 seconds, neither spoke. Charles didn't know where to start. Helen was traumatized, waiting for the next blow. Finally, Charles. I went to the hospital with Andrew. Helen sat up straight. Is he okay? Did I hurt him? He's fine. Better than fine. He can hear. The relief that flooded Helen's face nearly broke him. The doctor showed me his medical files, all of them. Charles's voice was hollow. 3 different specialists documented the blockage you removed. 3 of them recommended extraction. I never saw those recommendations. Helen's eyes widened. They knew. The medical concierge service managing his care kept that information from me. They kept him sick so they could keep billing me. Charles' voice cracked. For 8 years, I paid people millions of dollars to monitor a condition they could have cured in 15 minutes. And the person who actually helped him? He couldn't finish. He stood, paced to the window. I have spent 8 years believing that money could solve anything, that credentials meant competence, that expensive equaled effective. Mr. Waring, I was wrong about everything that mattered. He turned to face her. I need to know. How did you see it when no one else did? Helen hesitated. My grandfather. He had the same thing. Went deaf in one ear for 2 years. Doctors missed it. A visiting nurse finally really looked, and found it, fixed it in minutes. So you knew what to look for. I knew the signs. I knew what pain looks like when someone's being ignored. Charles sat back down. Tell me about yourself. Who are you? Helen looked surprised. I'm nobody. I'm just... Don't say that, please. She took a breath and told him everything. Her parents' death when she was 9. Her grandfather raising her, teaching her to pay attention. The incomplete nursing education she couldn't afford to finish. Years of caregiving work without credentials. Her grandfather's home in foreclosure. Why she took the job at Waring Manor. I needed the money to save my house, that's all. But then I saw Andrew, and I couldn't look away. When you decided to help him, you knew you'd lose the job? Yes. You knew you might face legal consequences. Yes. And you did it anyway. Helen's tears started. He was in pain, everyday pain, and no one was listening to him. No one was seeing him. Her voice broke. I lost my brother when I was 14. He was sick, we couldn't afford doctors, and he died because we waited too long. I promised myself I'd never ignore a child suffering again, no matter what it cost me. Charles stared at her. You risked everything for a child you barely knew. I knew him well enough. I saw him. Charles stood. And then he knelt. Right there on the linoleum floor of the police station. Helen gasped. Mr. Waring, what are you... I'm sorry. His voice shattered completely. I'm so sorry. Tears streamed down his face. You saved my son. You gave him his hearing. You showed him more love in 3 weeks than I've shown him in 8 years, and I had you arrested for it. You were scared. You didn't know. I should have known. I should have been paying attention. I should have been the one to notice his pain. But I was too busy throwing money at the problem to actually look at my son. He sat back, wiping his eyes. I've been running from him since the day he was born. Every time I look at Andrew, I see Isabel dying. I see my failure. Helen's voice was gentle. You didn't fail her, Mr. Waring. I wasn't there. I was closing a deal in Tokyo when she needed me. You couldn't have known. Sometimes things happen that we can't control. But I could control what happened after, and I chose to hide. I chose money over presence, specialists over actually being a father. He looked at her. You've been in our lives for 3 weeks, and you knew my son better than I do. Mr. Waring, you love your son. I see it every time you look at him, even if you look away quickly. Love isn't enough if I can't show it. Then learn. It's not too late. Isn't it? He's 8 years old. I've missed 8 years. Helen leaned forward. He's 8 years old. Which means you have at least 10 more years before he leaves home. You have time. You have now. Will you help me? Help you? I don't know how to talk to him. I don't know how to be with him. You're his father. You don't need me for that. But I do. I need someone who sees him, who knows how to listen. Charles straightened. Mrs. Thornton is fired, as of an hour ago. I'm restructuring my entire household, and I want to offer you a position, not housekeeping, Andrew's companion, his advocate, someone who will actually pay attention to what he needs. Helen was stunned. Mr. Waring, I'm not qualified. You're more qualified than anyone I've ever paid. You have the only credential that matters. You care enough to see him. $85,000 a year, full benefits, flexible schedule. It's enough to save your house. And Andrew needs you. Helen, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say yes, please. Help me learn how to be the father he deserves. Through tears. Yes, I'll help. Charles stood, offered his hand. They shook, but then Helen hugged him briefly. He loves you, Mr. Waring. He just needs you to show up. I will. I promise I will. They left together. In the car, Helen thought of her grandfather. I did it, Grandpa. I saw him, and I didn't look away. Ahead of them, a little boy who could finally hear, and a father learning to finally listen. Charles and Helen walked through the hospital corridors side by side. The disparity between them was still visible, his designer suit, her rumpled uniform, but something fundamental had shifted. They walked as equals now. Nurses noticed, whispered. Charles Waring didn't walk with staff like this. He didn't care anymore. They paused outside Andrew's room. Through the window, the boy sat on the hospital bed, wearing noise-canceling headphones, drawing. Is he okay? Helen asked. Dr. Chen says he's overwhelmed. 8 years of silence, and suddenly every sound in the world hits him at once. She says it'll take time to adjust. That makes sense. Like turning on all the lights at once after living in darkness. Charles looked at her. That's exactly what she said. How do you know this? My grandfather described it the same way when his hearing came back. The world was too loud, too much. But eventually he learned to filter it, to appreciate it. Charles opened the door slowly. Andrew looked up, saw Helen, and his whole face transformed. He ripped off the headphones and ran, actually ran across the room, throwing himself into her arms. You're here! You're here! Helen caught him, held him tight. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here. Andrew was crying, talking too fast. Dad said you got arrested because of me, and I was so scared, and I thought I'd never see you again, and... Shh, it's okay. I'm fine. Everything's fine. You're not in trouble? Helen looked at Charles, who shook his head. No, baby, I'm not in trouble. Andrew turned to his father, defiant. Dad, you arrested her? Why would you? Charles knelt to Andrew's eye level. I was wrong, I was scared, and I reacted badly, and I was wrong. She helped me. She was the only one who listened. I know. None of your fancy doctors ever actually looked at me. I know. Helen saw me in 3 weeks. Where were you for 8 years? The question hit Charles like a physical blow. Silence stretched between them. Andrew's anger crumbled into hurt. Why didn't you see me, Dad? Charles sat on the floor, eye level with his son. Because every time I look at you, I see your mother, and it hurts so much that I can't breathe. Andrew stared at him, the anger softening. When she died, I blame myself. And when you were diagnosed, I blame myself for that too. I thought if I threw enough money at the problem, if I found the best doctors, I could fix you and somehow make up for losing her. Andrew's voice was quiet. I'm not broken, Dad. Charles's voice broke. I know you're not. But I've been treating you like you were, and I'm sorry. I don't want to be fixed. I just wanted you to see that I was hurting. I should have seen it. I should have been the one to notice. Helen noticed. Charles looked at Helen, tears streaming down her face. Yes, she did, because she was brave enough to actually look. Andrew sat on the bed between them. For the first time, they weren't separated by silence or specialists or walls of grief. Can I ask you something, Dad? Anything. What did Mom's voice sound like? Charles froze. He'd never talked to Andrew about this. Helen started to stand. I'll give you two some privacy. Andrew grabbed her hand. No, stay, please. She sat back down. Charles hesitated. Your mother's voice it was like music. She had this laugh that could fill a whole room. I wish I could have heard it. Charles pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Do you want to? He found a video file he'd kept for 8 years, never able to watch. Their wedding, Isabel giving her vows. He turned the volume up, hit play. Isabel's voice filled the room. Charles, I promise to love you in sickness and health, in joy and sorrow, through every season of our lives. Andrew's eyes went wide. He was hearing his mother for the first time. Tears streamed down his face. "That's her? That's Mom?" Charles could barely speak. "Yes." Andrew listened to the whole video, mesmerized. When it ended, "She sounds beautiful." She was beautiful, inside and out, and she would have loved you so much. "Do you think she can hear me now? Wherever she is?" Charles pulled his son close. "I think she's been listening to your heart your whole life, and now she gets to hear your voice too." Dr. Chen knocked, entered with specialized headphones. Andrew tried them, relief flooding his face. "It's not so loud now. I can control it." He turned to Helen. "Will you help me learn to hear things?" "What do you want to learn?" "Everything. Birds, music, what rain sounds like, what my own footsteps sound like when I run." Helen smiled. "I'd be honored." Andrew suddenly turned to Charles. "Dad, can I try something?" He placed his hand on Charles's chest, over his heart, closed his eyes, listened. "Your heart is beating really fast." "Yes." "Why?" "Because I'm scared I'm going to mess this up. Being your father, really being your father." Andrew opened his eyes. "You can't mess it up if you're trying." Charles laughed through tears. "When did you get so wise?" "I had 8 years of silence to think." Charles hugged his son, really hugged him for the first time in years. Andrew whispered, "I can hear your heartbeat, Dad. It sounds scared and happy and sorry and hopeful all at the same time." "That's exactly what it is." That evening, Andrew settled in bed with headphones, listening to Helen's curated playlist. Charles watched his son's face light up. Helen sat on the couch reading. Andrew took off the headphones. "Helen, what's your favorite sound?" "My grandfather's laugh. I can still hear it in my memory." "What about now?" Helen listened. Machines beeping, corridor sounds, Andrew's voice. "Right now, your voice, hearing you ask questions." Andrew turned to Charles. "What's yours, Dad?" Charles looked at his son. "This, you, talking to me. I've waited 8 years to hear this." Later, after Andrew fell asleep, Charles spoke quietly. "I paid your grandmother's nursing home bill, in full, for the next 5 years." Helen stared at him, tears flowing. "Why would you?" "Because you saved my son when I failed him. Because you risked everything when I risked nothing." "The job offer still stands," Charles said. "Will you take it?" "On one condition. You have to show up. Really show up. You have to be his father." "I will, I promise." They shook hands. Andrew stirred, mumbled something. Helen listened closer. "I think he said, 'Thank you, Mom.'" Charles's tears started again. Helen smiled gently. She'd be proud of him, and of you, for finally letting yourself love him out loud. Helen settled on the couch. Charles stayed in the chair, watching Andrew breathe. For the first time in 8 years, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt like peace. Tomorrow, Andrew would wake to his father's voice saying, "Good morning," and he'd finally know what love sounds like. 3 months later, the Waring Manor had transformed. Music drifted through hallways that once knew only silence. Windows stood open, letting bird song spill inside. Laughter echoed in spaces that had been tombs for the living. Andrew's room was now on the main floor, near his father's study. No more isolation. Helen had a proper office where she coordinated his care, his education, his life blooming into sound. Morning breakfast had become sacred. Andrew sat between Charles and Helen, specialized headphones at a lower setting now, chattering about the woodpecker he'd heard in the garden. "Did you know they can peck 20 times per second? I counted." His speech was clearer, more confident. Months of therapy paying dividends. Charles leaned in, asking questions, truly listening. Helen observed with quiet satisfaction as father and son built the relationship they'd both been starving for. The journey had been remarkable. Week 1, Andrew overwhelmed and crying at loud noises while Charles learned to speak softly. Week 3, Andrew's first time hearing rain, standing at the window with wonder painted across his face. Week 6, his first music lesson, discovering he loved piano. Week 8, hearing his father say, "I love you," for the first time. Week 10, his first day at a special school for deaf and hard of hearing children learning to navigate sound. Week 12, Andrew's laughter, full, loud, uninhibited, filling the house like oxygen. Charles had restructured his entire life, working from home 3 days a week, no international trips without Andrew, breakfast together every morning, dinner every night. They'd developed rituals, morning walks, bedtime stories Andrew could now hear, weekend adventures exploring the world of sound together. In the garden one afternoon, Charles taught Andrew to identify birds by their calls. "That's a cardinal, right?" Andrew asked. "Yes. How did you know?" "I've been studying. I want to know all the sounds you grew up with." Charles's heart broke and healed simultaneously. Helen had become more than Andrew's companion. She was the bridge between father and son, teaching Charles how to communicate with a child who remembered silence but was learning sound. She'd saved her grandfather's house, visited her grandmother regularly at the care facility where she now thrived. One afternoon, she taught them both to make origami birds. "Why birds?" Charles asked. Helen smiled. "Because your son is learning to fly. And so are you." The legal aftermath continued. Medical board investigations against 3 specialists. Platinum Healthcare under federal fraud investigation. Charles had become an advocate, funding the Isabel Waring Foundation for Medical Advocacy to help families navigate complex medical systems. In interviews, he told their story, crediting someone brave enough to pay attention without naming Helen, protecting her privacy. At Andrew's first school performance, Charles and Helen sat in the audience watching him sing with other children of varying hearing abilities. Simple song, sign language accompaniment. Andrew saw his father, waved. Charles waved back, tears streaming. Helen squeezed his hand. "Look at him. Really look. I finally am." Andrew sang, voice still developing but filled with joy. To other parents, he was just another kid. To Charles and Helen, he was a miracle. Driving home afterward, Andrew dozing in the back seat with headphones on, Charles spoke quietly. "I never thanked you properly. You've thanked me 100 times. Not for what matters most. You didn't just give Andrew his hearing, you gave me my son. You gave me permission to be imperfect, to learn, to fail, and try again." Helen smiled. "You did that yourself. I just opened a door. You chose to walk through." "What made you so brave that day in the conservatory?" Helen was quiet for a moment. "My grandfather used to say, 'The Lord doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called.' I felt called. I couldn't explain it. I just knew I had to act. Do you believe God put you in our lives? I believe God uses willing hands. And I believe Andrew was worth the risk." That night, during Andrew's bedtime routine, he interrupted Charles's reading. "Dad, can I tell you something?" "Always." "I used to think I was broken, that something was wrong with me." Charles's heart clenched. "But Helen taught me something. She said I wasn't broken, just different. And now I get to experience something most kids don't." "What's that?" "I remember what silence feels like. I know what it means to really listen. Most kids take hearing for granted. I never will." Charles pulled his son close. "You're the wisest person I know. And I know something else." "What?" "Mom sent Helen to us. I'm sure of it." Charles threw tears. "I think you're right." In her grandfather's house that night, Helen found a note tucked in his old medical journal. "Medicine is both science and art. The science you can learn from books. The art you learn from paying attention to people. Never forget, the patient knows their body better than any scan. Your job is to listen. Really listen." Thomas Rivers. Helen held it to her chest. "I listened, Grandpa. I paid attention." 6 months later, in the Waring garden at late afternoon, Andrew ran through grass with a golden retriever puppy, headphones off, laughing. Charles sat on a bench watching, smiling. Helen brought lemonade. "Thank you," Charles said. "For the lemonade?" "For all of it, for seeing my son, for not giving up, for teaching me how to be present." Andrew ran over, breathless. "Dad! Helen! Listen!" Wind chimes sang in the breeze. "Don't they sound like tiny bells?" Andrew asked. "They do. Mom would have loved them. She would have. She would have loved watching you discover all of this. She is watching. I can feel it." He ran off with the puppy. Helen and Charles sat in comfortable silence. "Do you ever think about that day? The conservatory?" Charles asked. "Sometimes. I was terrified. But you did it anyway. Because he was worth it. Every risk, every consequence, he was worth it. You changed our lives with your courage. No, I just paid attention when everyone else looked away. Anyone could have done it, but no one did, only you. The miracle wasn't just Andrew's hearing, it was 3 broken people learning to be whole together. God doesn't always send help in fancy packages. Sometimes he sends it through people with nothing but willing hands and faithful hearts. Sometimes that's all a miracle needs.